Awesome. Um, Hi everyone. I'm Kari. I am an accountant by trade, so Filevine has been kind of a new thing for me this last year. But that said, that's what I'm going to focus on, I think, because last week we talked pretty in depth about like the integration and some of the updates that Filevine has come out with. But I think this, Jasmine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea here was just to kind of run through the billing process in Filevine, right?
Yeah, so some of the features within time and billing, I know that there's some new features that you've really had a chance to dive into. And so I think that that would be helpful for people to kind of see, especially those new features, like a deep dive of like, how would I edit an invoice template to be sent to somebody else? And, all of those little pieces. If you have any tips and tricks, I'm not sure if you all are using payments. But I know that that's kind of a newer item in Filevine, and there's some setup required and kind of best practices that you've seen there.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll just walk through some things. You guys feel free to write something in the chat. If you have any questions, I can pause at any point. But I'll just kind of run through the basics of it, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So this is the advanced screen, but I'll just go to just any project. So we have a demo project, and I always recommend folks to have a test project that's maybe, linked to their own email so that you can really send the invoices to yourself, take a look at what it looks like on the client. And this one has Zach's email, but actually in the background, I'm actually getting the email too, and I'll show you that feature in just a second. But usually you're going to, enter your time in. All of your legal staff is going to be entering their time. You, and then when you're in the billing process, you would either have that time already in as billing entries in the time entries section here, and they'd all be listed out, or you can manually do it. So kind of depending on how your process is, how big your staff is, maybe they're entering it all into the timesheet, or maybe if, the billing person is doing everything, then maybe you're coming in and entering, say, a flat fee or the expenses. I'll just show you directly in the billing section how you would do that. So you would enter in the time entries. You would, put yourself. You can remember that selection if you always want it to be yourself. Today's date or whatever date it was, your rate and how many hours it was, and then any description that you want. And so two features here are these toggle buttons, billable and chargeable. So if you have it completely off, it's just recording a time entry. There's no financial obligation to your clients. It's not going to show up on any invoice. It's just in Filevine for record keeping. If you put it on as billable, it's going to show up on the invoices, but with a $0 amount. So it's basically going to look like pro bono work that you've done. And then if you have chargeable on, which this is the default, obviously, it's going to show up on your invoices both. One thing that we don't have here in our test environment is the like time codes or expense codes. So you are able to enter time codes. There's a couple of different lists that you can enter. So there will be two drop-down lists with time codes where you could select, whatever kind of work that you're doing for a client. If you're working on a divorce case or if you're doing research, you can at least have some specification there. And then you would just save that entry. You would do the same for any expenses or flat fees. And depending on how your setup is, these might already be filled somewhat. If you're using the QuickBooks Connect integration, then these expenses might already be carried over from the expense request tab, which I'm not going to go into right now because I wanted to focus mostly on the Filevine side of it. And then time entries might already be in there if your legal staff has been entering it in through the timesheet. So then once you have all your billing entries ready to go, you can create an invoice here. And this is where you would select what you're wanting to have in the invoice. And I'm going to say this is the one by one method. I'll show you the bulk billing in just a minute as well. But say you wanted to, if I wanted to bill this 1 hour, I would, set all the dates that I want, the invoice date, due date, the terms. And then you would select what items you have. So if you have any expense items, I'll take one of those. And then don't have any flat fee items, so that should work good. And then you're going to go ahead and create it here. And then you're going to, it's already created and saved, but for our purposes, I want to generate the PDF so that I can look and see what it looks like on the client side. And I'll show you this in the bulk billing in a little bit as well. So here, this is one area that we do a lot of work for clients on because the template can be kind of a beast to set up. There's a lot, it's basically a mail merge template in Word. And so you've got some merge codes in the background. If you're familiar with that, then I'm sure you could pick it up. It took me a little bit to learn because I had never done that before. But this is kind of just our standard template. It can be customized to colors, fonts, and all of that. A couple of things I wanted to point out here that we highlighted on last week's webinar too, where there were some updates that Filevine was able to work through with us these last few weeks. And that was in the past, there wasn't a merge code to include past due balances. So we have the current due up here. So our current time, current expenses. And that's reflected here on this invoice total. And then any amount paid on this invoice would then result in this current due. But then if folks had a past due balance, and if you wanted that to roll into this invoice so that it was visible to clients, we just have gotten that coding basically. So if you see here, there's a listing of past due invoices, so that 4459 needs to be added to the current balance. And so we'll see that here and then the total due here. This is a little bit of background work, so we're happy to help if you need it or explain. I probably will be recording a video on it now that I've done it a couple times because it's a little bit tricky in the background, but just know that that is possible now. The one thing here to remember is that if you're using Filevine payments, the Filevine payment link will be for the current amount. However, they have just launched partial payments, which I can show in a little bit as well. Partial payments and full balance payments. So now it's not set. If you've been using Filevine for billing for the last several months, that might have been a difficulty for you that, those payment links, those Filevine payment links were linked only to the current due and folks couldn't pay any more or any less than that. But just in the last like 2 or 3 weeks, they have opened that up so that now, even though the payment link is going to be for $193, the client can actually pay $10. They can pay the full balance. And that's kind of set. There's some criteria on the back end in the settings that you can set, and I can show you that as well. But just know now, that's one of the bigger things that our team has been working with Filevine on for a while was those kind of AR issues, accounts receivable issues, to bring that balance forward. So I just wanted to highlight that again there. So yeah, then that invoice is there. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's a
Sorry.
question. Is the expense tracker different from the expense request?
So yes and no. Expense request is this is only when you have QuickBooks Connect. Basically, what our systems do is they carry over this entry into the billing. So I can illustrate that a little bit for you. So in the billing section, under billing entries, this expense that's native to Filevine, it only has here the date, the expense type, quantity, price per unit, and then you can add those like codes down below. So you can get a little bit of detail, but there's no payee. You can't track the payment. Like if you're needing to send it over to QuickBooks for a check or something like that for a bill payment, you can't do that through this. And so our team has created expense request, which you would enter in all that information, and then this would push to QuickBooks. You could do all of your bill payment, your check processing in QuickBooks. And in addition, then there's a little button that says create billing item. If you click yes, then it takes the applicable information that will go into the billing section and it will fill it for you. So basically, instead of having to do it double entry, like in the billing section in Filevine, and then again in QuickBooks, you can do it here in expense request, and then it goes to both places, like taking the applicable information.
And for most of our like contingency firms or PI firms,
Mhm.
we still use the expense request section. Even if you don't have QuickBooks, we'll use the info that you put in here to pull into like a settlement statement or something like that, as opposed to the stuff going into the billing section. I feel like most folks that are using the billing section are sending invoices out that they're hoping to get paid back, immediately. Again, for those contingency firms, it's usually at the end once settlement has been dispersed.
Exactly right. Yep. For contingency folks, it kind of tracks a total and then you would take that in your settlement. So when you do a settlement, you look at your expenses that you're holding out of the settlement, and this gives you a nice total, and that would need to match to, what you have in QuickBooks and in your financial records. So you can, hold that money out. Yeah. Did I miss any other questions that came through? Okay, perfect. So I'll go back into billing, and I just wanted to show you um, kind of so we've seen the invoice process. If you do want to do your approval process through, like have a robust approval process, you can do that through Filevine. So um, you can set this to, so right now it's in editing mode, and your little PDF right here will even show you it's in editing mode. And if you want to be the approver, if the billing person is just going to finalize the bill, send it out, you can do that here by finalizing. If you're like, yep, everything looks great, the PDF looks great. I do always recommend looking at the PDF version as well as this version at one stage in the approval process. Then you could just finalize it here, and then you would have an additional option that would be sending it out to your client.
And for the admins on the project, there's a few other things that you'll want to like keep in mind, especially if you have different rate schedules or different terms on the projects, that it's going to pick up whatever your default is. So if you don't change your invoice terms in the individual project, it's going to go with whatever your default is. Same thing with like the invoice template or who you're sending it to, kind of all of that stuff can be changed on a project by project basis. So you'll want to verify that that's accurate before you start, finalizing and sending out invoices.
Exactly right. Yep. So here you could send it out here by sending by email. I'm going to go ahead and do that just for a second so that I can show you on the back end. But I think you brought up a really good point there, um, Jasmine, to go into settings. So there is a global setting for all of your projects. And that's usually recommended to set up your invoice template for all of that. And that's going to be in advance. So I just toggled over to advanced billing setup, and in your invoicing codes, all of that, that's where you're going to be setting all of that up. So like rates, invoicing, this is where you'd put in your template here. There are some instructions and there's some merge fields available. There also are some settings. So like who's going to be the approver on all of the global projects. um, that sort of thing. Codes are in here. But then, like Jasmine said, if you have any custom settings on a project, you'll just want to be careful, like just keep your eyes on it basically, because you can change the project level settings here. You can change the rate schedule just for this project, just for this case. You can change the terms. Here's where you can change the billing contact. So you'll see Zach is the main contact on here, but then on the additional, and what I did was just a few minutes ago, I just removed him from the email so that he's not getting, all the emails that I'm sending right now. Um, and then, an additional contact. So it can send, to the default person, and then you can add an extra contact. And this is where you would choose your invoice template. So if you have multiple invoice templates for that PDF design functionality, we've got some clients who even aren't law firms, and they run like essentially two different types of business, if you will, where they need two different invoice templates. So you can do that specifically on each project here. Um, yeah, and then there's some settings down below which are for Filevine payments specifically. Um, yeah, but then, so we've got our invoice. I sent it to myself, and so I just wanted to show you that right here. So I'll just show you, it comes up with, in this case, I have Filevine payments linked up, but I wanted to show you that you can, change that amount. So here's that suggested amount, which was that current invoice amount, but the clients are now able to choose a different amount. So if they're looking at the invoice, so here's the invoice. So if they're looking at the invoice and they're like, oh yeah, it's 193, but actually I owe 46.52, they can go right here and do 46.52. Oh, huh. Okay, so never mind. That's just because we're in a demo environment. So it doesn't let you pay more than your total balance. And with this, there was like there were some credits in there already. So that's why that did that. And then you just go into pay, and then you can go in and, enter all of your payment information. So, so that's a pretty cool feature. And for me, that's a game changer. That was huge when they released that capacity. Um, and just to show you where that is actually, it is in the payment section. So again, we're in advance. If you have Filevine payments on, so this is really critical that this won't be applicable to you if you're using LawPay or another payment platform. This is just if you're using Filevine payments natively. So you have these payments, Filevine right here, these settings right here. Allow partial payment with a minimum payment of $1, and then allow payment of full project balance. So you can set that up for yourself. I did want to show you also these cool features that this is in Filevine, no matter if you have payments or not, you can choose to automatically apply payments and automatically create payments from project funds. So I'll go into those next. So kind of the payment side of it. So we've
Kari,
created our invoice.
before
Yeah.
you
Oh,
do
yeah.
that piece, will the PDF version pull over any invoices that are attached to the expense tracker or expense request? Commercial clients require leads submissions, but they have to attach PDF proof of expenses.
That's the unfortunate thing. We've been making that suggestion. So hopefully that will be an update that will come out. But at the moment, these billing entries will not attach to the PDF invoice. You can attach them here if you're using QuickBooks Connect. You can attach them here, but the problem is that there's no way for us to then attach them onto these billing entries. So honestly, for that case, I think most clients with that particular situation have been keeping their PDFs kind of separate and then sending them with the PDF with the invoice. But no, it won't, unfortunately, it won't attach currently. Were there any other questions with kind of that side of it, like the invoicing side?
None have come through so far since that one.
Thanks for watching that for me. Sometimes I get into it and forget.
Good, that's on your
The chat. That's awesome. Okay, so I'll go on, but we can come back at any point. So depending on how your billing situation is, you might be using retainers, trust funds. Filevine uses project funds as to be synonymous with trust funds or retainers. And that just is basically those funds that you haven't earned yet, but that you're holding for your client. If you are using that, then you would want to use this project funds in addition to the main summary invoicing. So basically, a client sends in $1,000 as a retainer, you would come in and add project funds. So you would put the date, reference number of whatever it was, the check, deposit and retainer. Honestly, these are exactly the same. So whichever one you want to call it, it's just fine. The only thing I could imagine using this for is if you are able to report on that type. If you need it to be separate, you have that choice. But say they gave you $1,000 retainer and you just enter that there. And then over in the summary, it still shows your current balance here. And then in project funds, it shows the balance here. Now, how do these project funds move over and pay an invoice? So we've just invoiced this $193, and then we want to pay it out of project funds. So we could turn on this setting here, automatically create payments from project funds when an invoice is finalized and when money is added to project funds. So basically, this just says if there's money in project funds, or if money gets added, go ahead and pay the invoice, or whenever an invoice is finalized. Um, we don't have that on just for demonstration purposes, but here we know we have some project funds here. And by the way, we can put it into the vital section up here. It's not here in this one, but I think project funds is one that we can put up here. So just that you know, and we can do some like auto hashtags, which are kind of nice so that we know if folks have funds in trust. That's like a popular hashtag to use up here. But anyways, to make a payment out of project funds, you're going to want to go to transactions. And this is going to be the same for if it's, just a payment on an invoice that gets collected directly into operating, or if it's a payment from trust and moving into operating, you're going to use the same button basically. So payment, and then your method is here. And this little checkbox is what you would select whether or not to use project funds. So if it's just a payment that somebody's writing a check in on that $193 invoice, you unselect that. If you're going to be using project funds, you just want to select that. Date, amount, let's do 193, and then whatever it might be for that. And then here is how you're going to apply it. And I don't know if they've rolled this look out quite yet for everybody. This might still be beta, but you'll still have kind of the same view. It might look just slightly different. But you can select which invoice you're going to want to apply it to, and then you would save. So now if you were to have on this other setting, the automatically apply payments, as soon as this invoice gets finalized, and if you've got the project fund setting on, then it will automatically process a payment as soon as you finalize the invoice. So that's a nice feature, especially when you're bulk billing. If you're billing, 100 clients at once from the advanced section, then all those payments from project funds automatically happen, which is really nice. So you don't have to come into each client. And likewise, if you have that automatically apply payments on when somebody makes a payment from Filevine Payments, so say we sent that link out to our client, they clicked on it just like I did a minute ago from their email, they went in, added that payment. If you have automatically apply payments on, then it will automatically apply to that invoice. The caveat here that I want to stress that one of my clients ran into a couple weeks ago is now Filevine's come out with the ability to pay more than just that invoice. So say that the client clicked on the $193 link, this link that, I just sent myself, and then they wanted to pay $4,000. So if they paid $4,000, it would first apply to that specific link. So it would first pay the $193 because that is the link that they clicked on. And then it would go back to the oldest invoice and apply funds in a sequential order. So if you don't want that to happen for any reason, then you're going to need to turn off that automatically apply payments. And so with this particular client, they just had one client that needed to pay a specific invoice that was just a random invoice that they wanted to pay. And they wanted to leave all the rest of their accounts receivable open for some reason. I don't agree with that accounting wise, but that's what the client wanted to do. And so my client, the firm, they actually had this automatically apply payments on. And so what I walked them through was, okay, let's turn this off for a second. We'll go into the client, we'll apply how we want it to, and then we'll go back and turn it on for the rest of our clients to do the normal process. So it is possible to kind of work it that way if you need to apply to a specific invoice. As far as project funds flowing through this way, obviously we're not touching your actual bank account. So we're not actually moving funds from IOLTA to operating. So one thing that will need to be done when you're using project funds and making payments is there's a report that can be pulled, a project funds report, where you can just filter down for the payments in a certain date range, I usually just pull the whole thing for the last like several months, and then I just filter it in Excel and I grab that total, and then that total is what you would then actually make that transfer. So we recommend to do that on a regular basis. It kind of depends on how your processes are, maybe weekly, monthly, to just be sure that those trust funds are actually moving to the operating account. Um, any questions to this part, to kind of how we use project funds? No?
No, none have come in.
Okay. Hopefully this is understandable and not too convoluted. I tend to kind of go down rabbit holes. That's why I'm an accountant and not a public speaker.
I always love a good
Um,
explanation. Okay, that makes sense. Someone actually does have a question.
yeah,
Can
absolutely.
suggested payment be changed to another phrase? They don't want to give the wrong impression that the client has to a client who has a larger balance.
That is our suggestion. So what I would absolutely beg you to do is go to this question mark right here and share your feedback and tell your AE or your account executive account manager over at Filevine, share that with them as well because we've talked to I just had a call actually last week with with a client. We were working through some issues and I had a call with the product owner of the billing section. So the person who's kind of managing the billing section in Filevine, she doesn't directly do the payments part, but we shared that feedback like suggested amount is a little bit wonky. So could we do it invoice number? Da, da, da. So that's our feedback to Filevine, and I would love to get as many voices on that because I totally agree. My suggestion to them is just like invoice number, whatever invoice this was, invoice number 46 or something along that lines there. Totally agreed. And the other suggestion that I'm always telling people to please give them that feedback is that, it would be awesome if we have a field here specifically for to enter the client information. Um, so I know they've heard us. We've been suggesting, improvements, and the partial payment was huge. So I know it takes a little while for them to program things. So that and the ability to send to multiple billing contacts and also that total on the invoice line. Those are three things that I know they've been working on. So from that side, please, please, please give all the feedback. That's amazing. And I'll continue to share it as well. Right now, oh, they are coming out with, I think it's official. I believe I'm allowed to say this. I hope so. Um, the email is going to be customizable soon. The email that gets sent out here with the invoice. So that might be where you could also change some of that verbiage. So just know that that is coming. They're working on that. I don't have a date, but I know it's coming. So yeah, any other questions?
No, not yet.
Okay. That was almost everything that I had listed, but I could go through the bulk billing if that would be helpful. Um, So I'll just go ahead and run through that too. So if you have, none of you probably have, just 10 clients. So you're not going to want to be doing that process for every single client. Um, so what Filevine has is a bulk billing section, and that's going to be in advance. So you just go into your advanced menu, and then after everything's set up, you need all your settings in there. You'd want to go to billing, and then you're not going to have this option most likely, but we have several different like portions of our Filevine org. So this is just our main one. So on this main screen that comes up when you click into billing is the unbilled time. So this is any of those time entries that are in billing entries here, but that are not on an invoice quite yet. So anything that hasn't been invoiced. And then you can search by a specific name if you just want to bill, a few people. You can select everything. One thing that came out recently, which I was super excited about, is tags. So this it doesn't seem super exciting, but this is so helpful because if you have different billing cycles or different billing processes for certain groups of clients, you can put a hashtag on those clients. So for example, I'm back in this client here. I could add a tag and I could create the tag, I don't know, billing on the first of the month, billing, or maybe on the 15th of the month. So billing 15. So I could create billing 15. I could do, um, I could do me. So I could do my billing group, or, it could be a certain attorney. And then you would just save this. And these, by the way, can be set up to 10 of these hashtags can be set as an auto hashtag. So any clients that fit a certain criteria that you set up could automatically have a hashtag applied. So that might be an option. I'm not sure if that's really viable for this kind of a thing for the billing things, but it might be. You could do like past due, for example. That's a big one. That's like an auto hashtag where anyone with accounts receivable past due can have an automatic hashtag applied. So then those are just sorting methods. You can report on them. But for this use case here, I'll put those two. And then I'm going to just refresh my billing screen. And then I could say, okay, it's the 15th of the month. I need to bill all of my billing 15s. So I search by tag billing 15, and then it's going to pull up all of my clients that I bill on the 15th of the month. Or, if you have different offices, that might be another thing. I have a client who has a couple different offices, and each office kind of bills differently with their own little process internally. So that might be a really useful case for that. And then you would just select that, those clients, whichever one. I'm just going to do the one here. And then you would create the invoice. And here it gives you a couple of options. So are you going to do all unbilled items, or are you going to do a date range? Usually I just do the all unbilled items, and that would pick up any like stragglers. Hopefully, everyone on staff is entering their time in a timely manner so that by the time you bill on the first of the month, you've got everything, like say July 1st, you've got all of June's time. But if there's one of those stragglers that like enters a March entry, it would be missed if you did a specific date range. So you totally can do a specific date range, but I ran into this literally last week with a client that their staff were backdating time entries, and a whole bunch of time was being missed because they were entering a date range and it wasn't pulling in all of their unbilled time. So just know that that option exists, and kind of the reasons why you might want to do one or the other. Then you've got your invoice date, so I'll just do it today. Um, and then what you're going to want to do, which actually this is a cool feedback for Filevine too. Um, you want to generate the PDF, but I would never, never, never do finalize right from here. And the reason for that is you can't undo it. You can void it and completely redo it, but then it kind of leaves this trail of like voided and redone and voided and redone invoices. But if you create it, it's going to create as an editing invoice. So it'll still be able to be changed. So I moved over to invoices here. So I've got unbilled time invoices, the invoices that actually have the time created. And then you can click on it by just clicking here. And here we're going to see kind of that same image. Actually, I don't know why it didn't create the PDF. It should have. It might still be in queue. But usually, so you can select, if for some reason a PDF doesn't form, which is going to be this column here. Don't know why that's so small. That's the PDF column. If for some reason you don't see a PDF there, you can select it and you can go to the three dots and you can say generate PDF. And then it'll at least generate it. I'm not sure why that didn't happen just now. I think that might have just been a momentary glitch. So anyways, you can look at the PDF from here. And so normally what we recommend is to utilize this screen for all of the approvers. So we've got our approver column here, and what each of your partners, maybe whoever is going to be the approver, we would set that up in the billing settings, kind of where I showed you earlier. And then those approvers would come into this screen. They would filter for themselves. So in this case, I'm going to use Zach's name because I'm not set as the approver on that client. And then they can look at their own PDFs. They can make changes right here. As long as it's in editing mode, you can change what's on there. You can add time entries, expense entries, just like we did on the single, individual project here. But this will, this editing mode will be there. And then if they want to see a new version of that edited PDF, they can just go here and regenerate that PDF. So fun fact, I do a lot of invoice template edits for folks. And yesterday, I think I did 30 of the same version because I just was editing the template and then I would regenerate it and see how my changes looked. So you can just regenerate it as often as you want. But then once they're happy with what their invoices look like, they can select whichever ones they are. And then they can either use this button, which if you hover over it, it says approve, or the 3 dots and approve. And then once they're approved, then the billing team can come back in and they can come into the same exact screen and they can search for those approved payments. Oops. Oh, sorry. There we go. There's the 3 lines. They can search for anything that's approved. I don't have any because I didn't actually do it, but they can search for anything that's approved and then, oops, get back to where I was, and then they can finalize it. So you would select, say that was approved, it would change the status. Let me approve it real quick. So I'll just approve it. And then one thing that we have given feedback to Filevine on, and I will say is a caveat here, is pretty much anyone can approve for anyone else. This can be a good thing and a bad thing. So, feel free to give them that feedback, if you feel strongly one way or the other. Okay, so then this is approved, and then we can finalize the invoice. Finalize it. And then that same one there's 47 right there. Then you could send it out. And again, these buttons here are pretty much the same as here. So you can email the invoice. And then you've got this option here to include yourself on the email. I'm not going to do that right now. But then you can send it and then it'll show up in their email just the same way that we showed a little bit ago. Couple of things here that might be helpful. The send date shows up here, which is nice because then you can at least see, kind of when they send. One thing that I ran into with a couple clients that I recommend kind of doing when you do email invoice, I recommend including yourself on it. And the reason for that is at this current moment, you're not able to see if you've repeatedly sent the same invoice. You will see the last date, but you won't see the history. So for a couple of firms, it was important to see kind of that collection history of, hey, we sent you that invoice 5 times. And then the client comes back and says, no, I never received it. So that kind of paper trail might be helpful if you set up maybe an email address that's like billing@yourfirm.com or whatever. And then you copy yourself and then just put that in kind of a folder and hold that in case you need it. So that's an option for if you think that you might run into that. What else did I want to talk about here? Oh, so for approval, I did want to show you the other method of approval. This is not really how I would recommend. I totally would recommend that your firm partners come in and do their own approvals. I have a couple firms that have kind of been dead set that their partners don't want to deal with it, kind of. And so their paralegals need to do it. And so what we've done for them is you can select say all of Zach's clients, for example, and then you can download, and it will download the PDFs for all of them into a zip folder. And then that could be like emailed to the partners, potentially. They could make their write-ups. the legal staff could make the entries, and then the billing staff could do the approvals and sending the invoice and stuff. But um, again, not really my preferred method, just because I feel like it's a lot of extra steps when we have the ability to for them to come in and approve. But if you need it, that's totally an option there. Um, yeah, any questions for any of that?
Nope, none have come in.
No? Okay, cool. I'm just gonna keep rambling. I'm running out of things to ramble about, but unless I have like a trigger. But
You're
um,
good. Um,
here's where you would access Filevine payments, but I'm not gonna go into that right now. It's kind of a little bit more in depth, but we have some videos about that. So if you guys need videos on any of these things, we've pretty much got training videos on all of this, like step by step of like our recommended processes.
Yeah, and if you all need help setting this up, or you're like, I really liked that template that you had, reach out to us. We can chat about kind of what optimization services look like for you. If you are interested in engaging in finance skills, or just again need help with that template, we can kind of talk about timeline and pricing for all of those things. I put both my email and Kari's email in the chat. It's just our first name. Mine is at Vine Skills, Kari's is at financeskills.com. And we'd be happy to kind of connect you wherever you need to go. Whether that's again finance related, time and billing related, or anything other Filevine related. Um, I will say that as you all kind of, if you haven't started the time and billing process, definitely take the Filevine University course to just get a basic understanding. Kari did an amazing job today of going over a lot of the features, but repetition is going to be really helpful as you navigate new elements of Filevine. And so would recommend kind of also taking that. And then you will want to kind of set up and have an idea of rate schedules and terms and all of those other tiny little pieces that you do have to set up in order to make your Filevine, especially the time and billing, successful there. And then again, you can always reach out to us if you do need help or assistance with any of that. Um, thank you so much for all of your knowledge, Kari. You are absolutely the best. So we appreciate you sharing it with us. Hopefully you all learned something today. And again, if you would like to engage in any of our services, feel free to reach out and we'll get you connected with the right folks. Hopefully we'll see you in a future free help session, and I hope you'll have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.